Welcome back to Attitude Effort Results presented by Teamwork Online and the Clubhouse. As a reminder for everybody out there, the Clubhouse is a platform where we can have mentorship phone calls. I've actually personally started to get a couple of those requests and just connecting with college kids and young professionals from around the industry and learning, having them learn about the industry. Again, nothing that I say is concrete and perfect, right? But it is awesome to have Teamwork Online and the Clubhouse behind us as our partners. And obviously, if you guys have not, go check us out on all the socials, as we have 3 team members full time running our socials. And so show them some love. All right, we're going to jump right in. Today we have a pretty special guest. I think this one's going to be fun. The reason I'm
Oh,
bringing Josh on is he provides a different perspective. Him and I have a little bit in common, but he provides a different perspective from the sports world, right? He's going to share a couple things that maybe are going to challenge some people. We're going to challenge some people today, and that's okay. And maybe some of these insights that Josh provides and questions that we ask are going to spark an idea for somebody out there. So without further ado, I will introduce Josh Moser. Tell us a little bit about yourself and your background. I want to hear from your perspective.
sure. I think like most of us watching, especially those that are trying to get in industry, sports was a huge part of your life growing up. For me, it's how I made my friends. It started in T-ball, but currently I'm the main sports anchor at the Fox affiliate in Miami, Florida. So I am responsible for covering all of our Miami teams, which in my opinion right now might be the best of anywhere in the country. Not biased, but I mean, I think I'm in a very lucky situation. And basically, I do all of the on-air reporting for Fox. I do a bunch of podcast stuff similar to this, but most importantly, it's just about connecting people and it's getting to share what we do, share what we love with so many people that want to get into this industry because the harsh reality is that it's very difficult. The hours are very different than a traditional 9 to 5. The requirements are very different than a standard job. And if you want to be different, you have to move differently. And there are so many people that helped me get to this point. Quite frankly, look, I'm the number one guy at the number one station in a football market. So I've got one of 30 jobs in the country. And it's a challenge, and a lot of people want to get to where I'm at. And then there's the day-to-day frustration with everything that I wish I had known about when I was getting in the industry, where it was, and I'm going to do anything, whatever you need from me, I'm there. And then as you get older, your priorities change and the industry continuously changes. So I'm just here to kind of help spread knowledge and answer questions that I feel I wish I would have known, especially trying to get into the industry. And just connect with everybody to share my story, and hopefully that inspires somebody to, or helps them in any capacity that they want to be in.
Man, I thought today was going to be good, but if you guys didn't listen to that last minute and a half, let's go back and rewind that. Today is going to be incredible. A couple things that right off the rip, if you want to be different, you got to think different. I mean, that phrase alone could be clipped and call it a day. Like, we're good. If you're a young college kid or a young professional out there, you want to be different. We can't go down the same path. Sometimes that takes moving away from home. Sometimes that takes getting out of your comfort zone and jumping off a bridge per se. Josh, tell us a little bit about what's kind of kick-started your career. How did you get from starting in school all the way to being the number one guy for one of the top franchises in the entire National Football League?
Relationships. And I think it's, as we look at this, attitude, effort, results, right? That's what we're talking about. So you constantly hear a very cliche phrase in sports. It's control what you can control, and attitude is everything. And as we go through life, no matter what stage that you're in, you cannot control anything around you. And there's going to be so many times in this industry or whatever industry that you're in that will frustrate you, and it'll make you angry. And then you question, why am I doing this? Why did I move to a tiny little town for $20,000 a year? And is it worth it on a Friday night where I'm at some podunk high school football game when I could be in a city with my college friends, enjoying it? But I guess for me, it started, I'm originally from Southern California. So sports was really ingrained in me. I was a really good high school athlete. I ended up being a Division II athlete. I'm 5'10", 165 pounds when I graduated high school. I played baseball. I played basketball. Basketball was my love. My grandfather Anybody that knows Tanner, he went to the University of Iowa. My grandfather played basketball there, and he's originally from Des Moines. So it was like my favorite person growing up. So I really just wanted to play hoops because I loved him. And growing up in LA, I had Kobe growing up, and it's just what we did. It's how I made my friends. And I kind of wanted to prove everybody wrong. Also, I never took the easy road. So started at UC San Diego, and then I had an injury that kind of took everything away, and then I ended up at USC. So USC for me was my breeding ground. Oh shoot, I'm wearing a USC hat. I didn't even realize. Um, so from there, being exposed to everybody, it wasn't necessarily what I did in the classroom. It was more everything outside of the classroom that allowed me to get my first job, which was in Grand Junction, Colorado. And there, from Grand Junction, and doing everything on the outside, is I was able to build relationships and then move to Denver, which was a great market to be in. Was able to cover Peyton Manning and Super Bowl there. And then from relationships preceding my time in Southern California to USC to everywhere that I've gone, your reputation is your resume, if you guys like these, little words. But to me, they resonate. And it's how I've treated people, how I showed up every day. And that took me to Green Bay, which was a really difficult decision. I'm at a top 10 market in Denver. I'm at the number one station, KUSA. But I had two guys that were there at the time that had been there for 20 years. And then this opportunity comes up in Green Bay. And I'm just like, do I take less money to go to a smaller city, but I get the number one job there where I'm going to get all of these reps and I'm going to be ingrained in a football community? And Tanner's got, experience in Green Bay. And I'll say that it is a unique city in a sense of that everything revolves around the team. But as
That's
a
a very nice way to put
yeah,
it.
as a single young professional, it is a very challenging place to live if you are not from there. And um, that was a great and hard decision where I traded a great personal life in Denver and in a good professional life to, okay, my ultimate goal is to get here. I'm going to take this, not lateral move, but I'm going to take this step because I think it's going to allow me to continue to grow. So then I moved to Green Bay. And then luckily in Green Bay, the job was incredible. I was able to meet so many people and get involved in the communities. And then that opened up opportunities in Chicago. That opened up opportunities to be on the radio. Everybody loves Pat McAfee. Do a couple back sometime to continuously reach out to all of the people. But all of these things, they all come from that extra stuff. So, we talk about moving differently. You have your quote unquote 9 to 5, your normal job that, Tanner does too. Here he is doing this podcast on the side. You have to find a way to have your passions come forward. At the end of the day, you have to make a paycheck and a living, but it's great if you can do that with your passion and everything combined. But everybody's working their job, but it's what you do in those additional 8 hours is what's going to separate you. And I think ingrained in me was, look, I was undersized. My gifts were that I could outwork somebody, that I was focused, that I was determined. And I've kind of used those things that we learned in sports naturally that was ingrained that you really subconsciously don't think about. And that kind of became, my way to make additional moves. So here I am in Green Bay, relationships with agents and whatnot. A job opens in Miami. And this is after a time it was during COVID. And I had this job offer from the MLB network. I'd been in Green Bay for 4 years. I'm like, all right, let's go to New York. Let's be great at this. And then everything happens. And then one door opens, one door closes, another opens. So now here I am in Miami and have been here for 4 years. And some great things have happened here. And, funny enough, there's ties to what I'm doing now to ties to what I was doing 15 years ago when I just broke into the industry. So, I think one thing, if I could say to kind of sum up this, I guess my nuts and bolts story of how I got here is you meet the same people going up the ladder as you do coming down the ladder. And that's a good analogy as you guys are starting to grow and think about your own career. You only have one opportunity to make first impressions. And you don't need to put so much stress on yourself that, you're freaking out about every first impression. But it's not necessarily the first impression. It's the lasting impression. For all the basketball fans out there, it doesn't matter who's in the starting five. It's matting the finishing five at the end of the game to close it out to get the win. So those are some cool, little buzzwords, if you will, that have certainly helped me in my journey.
I love it. You talk about. I think it's interesting. I'm going to move towards a question of adversity and failure and rejection. However, I'm going to start with a story. When you were in Green Bay, you were in a very small market. I grew up there, right? It's a very small market, specifically in the NFL. Like, it is by far, I would say, the smallest market in the NFL. However, you made a name for yourself. So you choose to leave a big market in Denver, a great personal life, and go to this, we'll call it Podunk City, in large city terms, right? And once you get there, now it's time to go to work. Like, once the decision is made, now it's time to go to work. You actually met a guy by the name of Scotty Smith, who I know very well and who I respect and who was at my wedding. I'm going to tell this story because I think it illustrates who you are as a person and how important relationships are. So, for those of you who don't know Scotty, one, if you are in Green Bay, you should obviously train with him. He's the best in the business. If you're not, Scotty owned a training facility that started out with a couple professional athletes. And I went there every Tuesday, Thursday in the summers before I went to work on the farm and would train with him in high school, right? He had jerseys, NFL jerseys on the wall mostly. However, there was one baseball jersey, and I was a baseball guy. And I was like, I'm going to be the second baseball jersey on this wall. So to me, I idolize Scotty because of the people and the relationships he built and the names and the jerseys on that wall. There are all-time NFL greats on that wall. Fast forward, he relocates to a brand new facility, and now it's not just a wall of jerseys. Now the whole complex is covered in these NFL jerseys. There's a couple college athletes, volleyball players that are up there. But there's one jersey that just doesn't really fit in, Josh. There's one that doesn't really fit into the whole professional athlete type of mantra that Scotty's got going on, and that's your jersey.
Yeah, it was more of an homage to him. I wasn't expecting him to do anything with it. But I guess how it came about. So one regret that I have was in Green Bay. I'll just be honest. Anybody getting into the local news profession, you really don't have a lot of money, especially now with the way things are being cut. And so we call it balling on a budget. And there are different things that everybody needs in their own life. But for me, one thing that I will never sacrifice or that I will put first is my health and wellness. And I think it's one thing is Tanner was an athlete too. And for everyone, if you're not healthy, you can't work, you can't take care of yourself, you can't take care of other people. So, for me, health and wellness is a big part of what I do simply because it allows me to do everything. And Scotty's great. Training's expensive. Everybody makes a certain salary. And, I wish I would have gotten over to him a lot more than I did. But one regret, I wish I would have trained with him 2-3 times a week. That would have been great. I was more like once every 2 weeks. And but then through relationships, I was able to send him people. So instead of me paying $100 or $150 a session, hey man, like you send me some other people, I've got you. And we were able to kind of, work something out. So there's like a random relationships where anybody that's in local news, you have a little bit of, I don't know, maybe Tanner, you can maybe explain this to me. Like you have a socioeconomic, you're kind of at the top of that ladder. Like you have value in yourself where you're talking about investing in people that necessarily isn't cash. And I think that good people, you want to be surrounded by great people. It's good to be surrounded by different people, but you want to be with people that are trending upwards. And I think that I was able to add value, even though I wasn't able to pay necessarily what his professional athletes were paying, every week. So, but Scotty's one of my favorite people. But yeah, that jersey was from the Jordy Nelson softball game that I was the host of. So talk about a cool experience in Green Bay. Yeah, I mean, I was basically a local celebrity, if you will. I don't really think of myself like that.
No, you were. That's why I was saying it. one of the points I was saying is like you went
Yeah.
to this small city and you made it your city like that you took the opportunity at face value and you absolutely crushed it in this small city, which gave you the opportunity to now
Yeah.
be in a spot where you're in one of the largest markets in the country, at the top of the food
Yeah.
chain as well.
Yeah. I mean, I guess I never really look at it like that. I would say this though, and maybe this is a little bit of a struggle. I'm from Los Angeles. I went to USC, which is a great journalism school. Not that you need to go to one to be in the sports broadcasting industry, because you absolutely don't. But my life changed. I worked for a pretty successful hip hop band, and I was basically doing all of these amazing things at 23. I think it's just like the peak of my life, and I'm in the fast lane, and you're around all these athletes and all of that, and there's good and bad to that. That's maybe a separate conversation. But I go to Grand Junction, Colorado, which is this tiny town of 50,000 people, and I'm making $19,000. I'm literally qualifying for food stamps for my first job, and
Damn.
which was illegal, and they were doing a bunch of stuff, which maybe we can talk about at another point of this, which is,
Maybe off camera.
yeah, oh, it's fine. No, it's setting boundaries as you get older. Like, I think in your 20s, you're so excited to get opportunities, but the pendulum kind of swings. I always call it like an inverted pyramid. So if you think of, a pyramid going up and then the invert, so maybe like the sand castle that you flip is maybe the same thing. It's, you're reaching out trying to get jobs and people help, and then all of a sudden you get to a certain point and then everybody's reaching out to you. So it's like the two sides of the pendulum. But I go to Grand Junction, and I'm like, in this little tiny town, I'm trying to think of something comparable for Green Bay. It'd be like going out to Shawano, maybe, where
Okay.
you're spending your Friday night in a town of like 1,000 people. There's this place called Olathe. They're known for their sweet corn, and you're covering their football team. And I'll be honest, like rural towns coming from Los Angeles, your JV team would smoke the varsity team at all these places. Your freshman team would probably beat all these guys. But to the town, it means a lot. And I struggled where I was hanging on in the beginning to my LA, USC, or I'm kind of maybe playing victim a little bit. Like, what am I doing? I could be out in, Manhattan Beach right now, or I could be off of Sunset, like meeting all these people, but I'm in this little tiny town in Colorado. Like, what am I doing here? And I think there was a moment where, you talk about embracing a community. And I think for anybody going into this, we're servants of the community. My job is to be the liaison between the professional team or high school team, whatever team I'm covering, and the fan base. That's all my role really is. And the moment I was like, fuck it, I'm all in. I'm here. I'm going to be here. Forget about LA. Forget about all this. Forget me staying here for a year, and then I'm going to move on to someplace bigger. It was the moment that I truly decided I need to be a part of this community. And I'm so happy that this happened in my first market, because, I needed to grow in that way. So for anybody that's getting into this, moving into a small market, there are great people everywhere that you go. They're going to meet terrible people too. But my goal would be to try to meet a new person every day. And you get to control your life and what's important to you. But no one ever does anything alone. There's a great quote, if you want to go fast, go alone. But if you want to go far, go together. And you're trying to, as a broadcaster, build a team around you, because in a broadcast, you're the one out there with a microphone and speaking to the athlete, or you're the face, quote unquote, but there's a producer behind the scenes. There's an editor behind the scenes. A lot of times, if we talk about MMJs, you're doing all of those. Plus there's a director back at the station. There's a Chiron producer that's putting in name supers. And so this has to touch, 15 different hands. And I'll tell you, it's a lot better off if you're friends with those 15 people and they'll go the extra mile for you, than you being the quote unquote big shot where you're too concerned about moving up, because then those people won't work for you. And it's, not that you're only nice to them because you want them to help you, but it's about being a part of a team where you're realizing that if you're sacrificing for the good of the team, the team is going to be better off. You may be the face, you may be the superstar, but, you talk about all 11 in football. If there's one person that isn't doing their assignment on that play, the whole play fails, regardless if you've got Patrick Mahomes throwing you the ball or not. So that's kind of a cool like life moment, I will, where I figured out early on, and then I took that to Green Bay, and yeah, I mean, I kind of think that's part of your reputation, your brand, your credibility is everything as a journalist, and I think it all goes back to choosing to be who you want to be, and you're going to get as you get more experience. Everybody's going to have an opinion. There's going to be people that love you. There's going to be people that hate you. So you constantly hear athletes talking about, blocking out the outside noise. And as you block out the outside noise, you need to make sure that you have a very strong inner circle. And especially in this world of social media, where a whole bunch of stuff gets said, and in larger markets you go, and the more I don't know if the word is notoriety that you get, the more noise that you also hear. So there's growth in every stage, but if you can get involved in communities and show up, control your attitude, and be there for your people, uh, you're going to grow. And even in a bad experience, if you're there for your people, they show up, and the other person lets you down, you get to learn how to control your emotions and how to move forward with that person, which is something that you have to do in business and in your personal life. Because the reality is, you're not going to agree on everything. So there's something to be learned every day. And a coach that's very dear to me is Pete Carroll, and he's talking about win the day. That's his motto, win the day. And you talk about people waking up on their birthday, they're so happy, and you realize that you can trick your brain into realizing that it's your birthday every day. So it's like you get to wake up, you get these opportunities. You guys are in college that are watching this. You hear 4 years, best 4 years of your life, 5 years in some cases. And everyone that you talk to would love to go back to that. It's the same mindset no matter where you are. It's just you have 24 hours. Everybody does. How are you going to spend them? And yeah, that's my long-winded answer. I kind of forget what the question was, but that's where it went.
No, that's awesome, because one of the pieces that I thought was very impactful there is, like, a lot of people come out of college and they're like, all right, cool, like, what's my dream job? Like, I need to be making 100K right away, and I need to be in my dream job. And that's just not how the world works. There's going to be people that have that luck or have built that, right? But even if you're in, like, for me, I was in my quote unquote dream industry right away.
Yeah,
But I went to Miami. I made 23K the first year I was there, and
possible.
I was doing, yeah, and I was doing 200 touch points. I was calling, emailing 200 people a day, just to hope that three of them would pick up and one would talk to me, right? And
Yeah, it's tough.
23K in Miami is literally nothing. Um,
Yeah.
and so I think when we're talking with two individuals, you on a way larger scale than me, but two individuals that enjoy
Yeah.
what they do genuinely and have quote unquote made it in some people's eyes. It didn't happen like that overnight, right? It's building your Rolodex throughout your career that you mentioned. And it truthfully, sometimes, like, it just sucks. You're gonna have to go to those Friday night games and report some to have the opportunity and to build relationships, connections, build your reputation to be in the spot where you are now. How has some of those early experiences
Hmm.
where maybe you were in a spot that you didn't necessarily enjoy every moment,
Hmm.
how have those shaped to where you are now on a national stage with an NFL franchise?
It's to quote Aaron Rodgers a little bit here, who's, definitely a different cat, but someone that it's the top of the profession. Everybody talks about what happens on Sunday, but it's the work that you put in Monday through Saturday. And I was kind of talking about, all of those off hours of like things that I, you know, would do. So I'll be honest, like Green Bay, Tanner growing up there, no disrespect to Green Bay, it was very challenging as a single young professional. I was in my late 20s, in my early 30s at the time. I'm now 37. And, to date was just challenging. And the more I threw myself into work, like the more that I realized I need more of a social life. I was just having a hard time finding people that, I could relate to in that way. Most of the people at my age at that point had settled down with children, and I really didn't want to date anybody in college. There was too much of an age gap. So it was, being able to see like, okay, this isn't working. Okay, what's close? Chicago, what's close? Minneapolis. But let me use all of my relationships that I've built and go network, go have fun there. And then it was also great because I'll be honest, Tanner, in Green Bay, like I couldn't go a lot of places. I was definitely not a Packers player, but everyone for the most part knew who I was, and they saw me on TV. And I think when you're on TV, for the most part, you're looking good in a suit and tie for a man, or as a woman, you're dressed very nicely with your makeup on, you're done to the nines. They assume that you make all of this money and you live this quote unquote lifestyle that the professional athletes do, which is not the case. Sorry, everybody, it's just not. So, but I mean, I think it's here's identifying, all right, I went for like personal relationships elsewhere. And then that turned into me getting a job with Stadium, which is in Chicago, which was a national network. And, it goes back to those, relationships, I guess you could say. I'm trying to think of a really good example would be when I was in Grand Junction, my first market. Denver was 4 hours away, but I had built a relationship with a couple of guys that had been on the Broncos through my time at USC. There were a couple of players on that team, and I reached out to their PR director. His name's Patrick Smythe, who's a phenomenal person and has been a huge help in my life. And I would drive on my off day on a Sunday, and I was Monday through Friday at the time, and I would drive 4 hours. I would go stay with a friend, and I would cover the Broncos game. And then that turned into me going to my bosses and saying, look, I got credentialed to this. This has never been done before. They wouldn't pay for a place for me to stay, but I went that extra mile because I knew that me getting reps in the Broncos locker room and me making relationships was going to help me on the next step. And then something it's called a live view. It basically allows a live truck for you to be live. It's essentially a backpack. They came about in 2010. We had one when I was at USC, but our station just got one. And we had the X Games in Aspen. We were the only station to broadcast in Aspen. And so I'm like, great, ESPN branded event. And you're there. So I'm like, guys, let's go up to Aspen. Let's bring this piece of technology. And now we can do these live reports from the X Games. And being in Colorado, skiing, snowboarding is huge. And quite honestly, in Southern California, we were never a part of that. Our varsity coaches were like, yeah, no skateboarding, no skiing, no snowboarding, because we don't want you breaking any bones. We need you for the season.
Yep.
And so for me, it was something like new, but it was really cool to be a part of that culture. And then luckily for my work on that, it kind of got me in the door with ESPN because it was an ESPN event. And you talk about like weird coincidences. There was a guy, Caleb Moore, who tragically passed away. His snowmobile landed on him. And I just had to happen to talk to the family. And then, we got all this crazy reporting. The hospital was right in Grand Junction. It's the closest, like, very big hospital. So I got thrust into the national spotlight for just being there. A good example, Jeff Darlington, a good friend of mine, if anybody watches ESPN, he does a phenomenal job. He was the one that was with Scotty Scheffler at Valhalla when he got arrested. And it was just because it was like 5 a.m. Jeff was there on time and early. When you go back to the attitude, effort, results. And he didn't need to be there that early, but he had the wherewithal to be in the right place at the right time based upon the habits that he had put in place. And then he gets all this amazing footage of Scotty, getting detained and eventually arrested. And then you hear Scotty calling to him, like, help me. And, it's all of that kind of like work right there, the relationship building, being in the right place, understanding the content, knowing what you're supposed to do. You don't really think about it, but all of that built up in the past allows you to kind of shine in that moment. And, going back to what you said, where everyone in this age, you want it now, you want the $100,000 now, you want the validation from bosses, from everyone around you to tell you how great you're doing. That's not why you do this. You need to put that to the side now. It's going to save you a lot of pain. But in that moment, if you do all of that, it'll take care of itself. And I think that brings me to kind of, when you're looking for these jobs, it's not who you know, it's who knows you. And I think that's a big distinction.
Really just put that out.
Yeah. And that's a big distinction for you guys coming out of college. It's another quote that I like: you never have to take back an unspoken word. People should know about you, and you want to let your actions and your work speak for yourself. Now, you want to be reaching out to people, but sports jobs, you get a sports job on TV because you're top of mind of someone else. The job's already filled by the time it's posted and you're looking on a job form. It's just kind of how it works. Uh, so yeah, I mean, there's just a lot that goes into it, but you have to set the barometer for yourself. And whatever that barometer is, you know, you have to know that you're doing this because it works for you. And all of the extraneous factors have to be put to the side. That's your sacrifice, if you will. And I think that applies for all sorts of life. And the biggest thing with that too is if your barometer is really, really high, don't burn yourself out. Give yourself grace, because a lot of times I say 80% of what you think is 100% is 100% for a lot of people, especially if you're listening to this podcast and you're trying to achieve, you know, what we believe are our great things in the profession. So, yeah, just continue to work, but don't burn yourself out, and maintain perspective on why you're doing what you're doing. And you have to believe in yourself, and then you want to surround yourself with people that believe in you and kind of grow together. The old iron sharpens iron. You know, there's people that I call if I have an issue or something like that I'm questioning, or, you know, doing stuff like this to just get advice from, and just to be with Tanner. It's cool to hang out with, you know, Tanner here. And, you know, these types of things are going to carry you much more than I got to hit this on a balance sheet, or my boss is mad at me, so I have to do this. Like, none of that really matters. It's if you do good work, everything will take care of itself.
Yeah, be great at who you are right now. It doesn't actually matter
Yeah.
where you are. Just be great at who you are. I was actually talking with a high school. I'm starting to speak at different places because of the platform, because of just wanting to help and give back. And I was speaking at a high school, and I was going around the room just talking about job interviews. And now I'm on the other side of the table where I'm interviewing people. And so just walking them through what that process was like. And the one guy kind of raised his hand the first time. I was like, "Hey, who's interviewed for a job here?" And he kind of like sheepishly raised his hand. And I saw him out of the corner of my eye. And I go around and I'm talking to other people, and I was like, "All right, who else is interviewed for a job?" And he didn't raise his hand the second time. And so, me being me, I called on him. Right? I was like, "Hey, you kind of, sheepishly raised your hand the first time, but not the second time. Like, have you interviewed for a job before?" He was like, "Yeah, I just actually got a job at Chick-fil-A, but I'm the lowest person on the food chain. Like, I'm just a food runner. I don't do anything but bring people food." And I was like, there maybe socially there's a food chain, right? And obviously people want to grow and learn and continue to move up in the world. But just be great at where you are, because for that guy, if he's the greatest food runner out there, when there's a spot open for cashier, he shouldn't even have to apply, because people understand where his work ethic is. People understand how his attitude is. They're going to go and talk to him first. Like you mentioned, the job's taken before it's posted, right? Like everybody's got their people that they see. Everyone's got their people that have reached out to them, that have built relationships, that have put themselves in the right spot. By the time it's posted, most of the time, I hope I don't get in trouble for saying that. Most of the time, it's just kind of like an HR like box check, right?
100%.
Like, hey, we have to do this. But most people have their guy or have their girl. So I absolutely love that piece of advice from you, and I think it's impactful. I'm
Yeah.
Go ahead. Something.
No, I would just say, coming off of that, when you're applying for jobs, I call it like throwing out fishing lines, right? And you're just trying to get that one bite. But that doesn't mean that you can't cast that line back and then throw out another line to that same person later. So, well, the way that I got my job in Denver, coming from Grand Junction, which was market like 180, Denver's was top 10, was that, you know, I didn't get this job, but I made it a point in my head once a month or however long. I did this really cool story, you know, I wanted to pass this your way, knowing that, you know, when a job became available, they were thinking of me. So, like, I would say that if you're failing to get that job that you want, you have a contact, that Rolodex that we talked about. That doesn't mean that you can't never use it again. Like, they rejected you once. So I wouldn't be worried about rejection. I would view it as, I don't know, there's a stupid line from the movie National Treasure with Nicolas Cage that I love. It's like, you know, Thomas Edison, you know, building a light bulb. And he's like, he failed 99 times. Well, he learned 99 ways not to make a light bulb before he made the one work. So same kind of concept where, you know, you don't want to be annoying and, you know, continuously bombard people, but that doesn't mean you get a no once. You should definitely reach back out again, because the door can always open, and a door that you thought was closed forever might ultimately be your goal.
However, I'm curious, genuinely, probably for myself, how have a lot of people get on podcasts like this? And again, we are a positive podcast, right? Attitude, effort, results are all positive things. I think what you just said is important too. Like sometimes the negatives are great. Sometimes you get rejected. You're like, dang, I learned what not to say in an interview, right? I learned
Right.
what not to do in that situation. How have you, throughout your career path, handled rejection, handled adversity to be in the spot that you are now?
I think it's a daily thing. You know, you want to talk about failing over and over again. I think failure is a great thing. Trying to think of some specific examples. Um, sure. All right. So going back to Grand Junction, when I was younger, I think this was a good learning experience. I mentioned the X Games, and I had an executive from ESPN that I was talking to, and I made myself so nervous that when I was on TV, couldn't even tell you what I said. No clue. I literally blacked out. I lost all focus because I was so focused on, um, impressing maybe that person was real, or like I saw this person as like, this person's going to give me the job. I better be perfect. And I was so worried about being perfect that it worked against me.
Mm.
And I went home that night and I'm like, I blew it. This is the end of my, like, I'm never going to get a job. I'm not good enough, da, 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 da. And I think having humility, this person still gave me their contact information. And like a month and a half later, I sent this person some other stuff that I had done. And I just said, great to meet you at the X Games. I'm so embarrassed by the way that I performed. Honestly, I was, nervous. I'd never been in front of an executive and I just wasn't able to show my full self. But in this piece, I feel like I am, and this is how it relates to you. And it made me think of you. And I literally thanked the person for being there and for watching me fail, because now I know not to do that again, or more importantly, how not to let that moment freak me out. Because there'll be times, especially coming out of college, when you're talking to Aaron Rodgers, it's not easy. It's intimidating. I'm just going to be honest with you. Jimmy Butler is really difficult to talk to. And, I think being nervous and failing in those experiences, it's only going to help you the next time. And the good news is, if you go back to attitude and effort, if you make a mistake and you're open and honest about it and you continually show up, they're going to forgive you, or they may not, but like the people that will matter, that truly want to help you, that you want to be around, they will forgive you, because ultimately we want to be around people that grow, and you're growing in your own process. And it goes back to that, you meet the same people going up the ladder as you do going down the ladder. So I think, me bombing that interview, I mean, there were times when I talked to Pete Carroll, I bombed it, and I'm like, oh my God, this guy's never going to give me 5 minutes ever again because I suck. And then I'll remember I talked to him once and I didn't. I said, hey, you were much better than the last time. And it was like, I think it's getting that comfortability and owning and feeling comfortable in your own self. So I think for the people that are watching that are specifically into wanting to get on TV, it's so subjective, but you have to be yourself. And it's a loaded question of, like, you're 23, you don't know who you are, and you're constantly evolving. But you just have to be you. And if you fail, forget about it. There will always be another opportunity. You're creating, the jail or the prison in between your ears, if you will. You can always pivot. And if you know that, that's why Ryan Clark named his podcast The Pivot. You're pivoting. You can always make a move. So whatever lane that you're on, you can always make a move. So the best part is, I kind of look at it like a spider web. You're creating the foundation, and then as you get more experience, the rings get bigger, your reach gets bigger, and then it will all come back to you. And it starts by failing in the beginning and trying different things, and you realize, like, great, that didn't work. Okay, we're going to try it differently the next time. So accepting failure and understanding that you don't know everything has truly, like, helped me. And then when you don't know the answer, just say, you know what, I don't know. Can you show me? Can you teach me? And that's a hard moment to do, because you're trying to impress everybody, because you want a seat at the table, especially people that are older and more successful than you. It's just showing up and asking questions. And If you make that mistake, don't make the same mistake twice. Understand what that mistake was. And I would say that I constantly do that, or it's having conversations ahead of time like, hey, I want to try something different. What do you think about this? Okay, then let's go back and review our work. Think of it like game film for all the athletes that are watching. You know, you try a play, try the play work. This is why it worked. All right, you try a different play. Here's why it didn't work. Let's identify what didn't work. And then we're going to go back and we're going to try to do it again. It's the same with me on TV. There's times where I purposely try things on air. I go back to the air check and say, okay, did I like that? Did I kind of not like that? And then you constantly evolve. But man, it's constantly growing and making sure that you are doing something different. Because again, if you're doing everything that's already been done by everybody else, you can't stand out. And you know, if that's what you want, that's great. But for people that I feel like want to reach their own full potential, it's you have to do it unique to you and in your own way, and never lose sight of your vision.
I think the constantly growing piece is so important. I listen to a bunch of podcasts, but one of them I consistently listen to is Ed Milet. And he's got a ton of different businesses. He owns a jet. He owns all the cars, a house. He actually just bought an island. Like, he's got basically everything that you could ever want, right? Yeah, it's ridiculous. But, like, he could go and buy pretty much anything he wants. And he talks about consistently of there is no end goal. Like there is no gold at the end of the rainbow. The whole rainbow is gold, right? How can you pick up little pieces of information from people consistently? Because if you stare at the top of the mountain, like you don't climb a mountain just staring at the top the whole time, right? So how can you, like you just said, consistently just get better right where you are right now and consistently grow? And I think that's awesome.
Yeah.
I'm curious. I have a couple questions that we none of what we prepared today is what we talked about, which is awesome. This conversation has just flowed. Um, Give me, for people who want to be in the career path that you're in, and for people that genuinely don't know what the backside of the profession is like, right? I mean, even for
Yeah.
somebody like myself, I'm like, oh, I see Erin Andrews on TV, but like, I don't know what she does, right? Oh, I see all these people on TV, but like, I don't really know the backside of it. Tell me a little bit about the backside of what you do, and then I want a cool story where it was like, well, make sure that you can say it on the podcast. And then one of a cool moment that you've had in your industry that that has allowed you to be like, damn, that's why I do it. I want to keep coming back and do it.
Sure. So I think for everybody watching, everything starts with writing. And as we move forward into AI worlds and all of that, your ability to communicate is everything. So from the basic foundation of journalism, you need to understand facts, you need to have credibility, and you need to know how to write. And writing for TV is very different versus writing for print journalism or for doing podcasts. It's called active voice versus passive voice, and your backstory is layered in so many different things. If you were just to talk about getting ready for TV, you have the writing piece, you have the editing piece, and then the ability to present the news. So all of that is based in your knowledge of sports or your knowledge of the content, whatever that content may be. So first step is to understand what you're talking about, ask questions, and then you can build relationships with players to continue to grow your knowledge. But the back of it is I go into work every day. I write to the video in news. You don't want to write something and try to match the video to it. It's much better to write to the video because we're a visual medium, and you never want to have your words change what the images are. Your job is to accentuate what the images are and explain them to your audience. So it's also important to know who your audience is. Our audience on this show is very different than the audience would be on, a 10 o'clock newscast for me. So it's catering to the people that are watching because that's who you're playing to. It's not your friends. It's not the professional athletes. It's who is watching your show. And if you know who's watching your show and you understand their knowledge base, you can cater directly to them, which is what your job is. So I think that's kind of the piece. And then your ability to write in and out of what are called sound bites. So that's where you hear a player talk or knowing highlights, you know how to write to it. So you get the video, you write to the video, you explain it all in facts with your own personal style, and then you're you're able to put that on TV with your performance. But the back work that goes into that, it's reaching out to the PR directors, reaching out to all of the athletes, knowing all of your stats, constantly in communication with your producers who are putting together the show. There's something called a rundown where you have an hour newscast. Every story has a slot, but as stories become heavy or more important or there's breaking news, you kind of have to flow. It's like be like water. And when you get so rigid like athletes are, where you're trying to be, you're here focused for this time, you're here focused for this time, you kind of have to break that pattern in news because you can't control all of these things that are happening around you. And what matters is when that light turns red and you're live and however many people are watching, that you are at your best, no matter if you're having a bad day, your boss is yelling at you, your girlfriend broke up with you, your mom's mad at you, if you have a sick grandparent. Like, you have to put your blinders on for that amount of time and realize that, no one cares. Like, it's my job to entertain you with facts. So that's kind of the backstory of kind of what we do. And I guess to the other question, for me, my job, I mentioned this earlier, is like my job as a sportscaster is I'm the liaison between the fan base and the team. It's not about me. Where I get to inject me is the personal style that I do by communicating to you. But if I feel as a journalist, you never want to make it about yourself because it isn't. I'm sorry. And if you're in it for that reason, that's great. But I can tell you that it's going to be very difficult in this job field when you are like that because it's about the team, not me. And it's just like in a sports team, it's a corporate structure, be a company man, company woman. I mean, you kind of have to play the game. And then if you want to do the me stuff, that's where you can do it on the side. But again, you're going to need a whole group of people to help you with that me stuff because so many pieces, like we explained earlier, have to touch the product in order for the product to come to life. Like anything in business, it's not one person doing it all. You have the team that puts it together, and someone may take the credit, but it's the team grows. But I think the cool story that's as a journalist, it's my job to make change, evoke change, and to help people and to bring them closer to their athletes. I think the thing that separates us is that we have the access that a lot of people don't have. And as you listen to all of these podcasts or people on Twitter that are, sound pieces or aggregators to these teams, and everyone follows, this person, the reality is you don't know. They're not around the players. They're not in the room. That's what separates you. And so the cool story is I used to host a show called Inside the Huddle, and Jordy Nelson was my co-host, the former Packers wide receiver. And this man had been trying to get a hold of the Packers. He had a daughter. Jordy Nelson was his favorite person in the world. Now we're talking about small town Wisconsin where the Packers are everything. If you're from Columbus, Ohio, it's like Ohio State is everything. Same with LSU and Baton Rouge. It's your lifeblood, kind of like Buffalo with the Bills. You could even say like New York with the Yankees a little bit. It's like devout fan base. Philly's like this. I mean, sports are everywhere.
Yeah, we're nuts.
Sports is
Packer
everything.
fans are crazy.
Yeah. So this man loved Jordy Nelson. He named his daughter Jordy. And his daughter, unfortunately, was born with a lot of sickness and illnesses, and she ended up passing away at a very young age. And the father was a farmer, and we're talking about, comes from nothing, was just a hardworking man and loved the Packers, and unfortunately was dealt this situation in life with it's very difficult to lose a child, and he wanted to do what he could for his daughter, Jordy. And he wanted to bury his daughter with, something from Jordy Nelson. Like this would be something cool to make it full circle. And he tried to get a hold of the Packers, and somehow he got a hold of me, knowing that I did the show with Jordy. So I brought it to Jordy, and we were just like, "Wow, this is a crazy situation." And it's like, you know what? Let's change this guy's life. And we're like, great, let's do it. So we have the guy come to the show. We did a bunch of autograph signings before every show. And this man was able to meet Jordy, and Jordy signed a jersey for him, and he was basically like able to put his daughter to rest and like bring peace to his whole family. And to me, this is one of the strangest but most uplifting maybe stories where you go back to like validation from bosses and people of authority that you think matter, or the executive at the next job, or your whatever. Here you have an opportunity. You literally change this person's life, and this person was able to live better because of you. That's one that stands out. I'm gonna give you another quick one, even though you didn't ask for it. This was in my first market in Grand Junction, Colorado. We have this news anchor, Emily, and we had a sports opening, and Emily was married to this lovely man, Adam, and um, Adam was a sportscaster. He was in a different market, and I'll be honest, Adam, if you watch this, you know you weren't the most qualified person. There were people that were definitely more qualified than you. But this job paid $20,000, and his wife worked for the station. And here's an opportunity for the husband to move and to actually be with his wife and to live in the same city. And um, I'll never forget, my boss says, like, what are we going to do with this? And I said, look, let's change their life. Like, how amazing is this? They're making this work. They got married. Like, I think if we bring this person in, they will work so hard because they'll be able to be together. And that will mean so much more to them than to grab whatever person. And I said, more importantly, it'll make me feel good because here I am helping someone. And my boss was like, I wasn't going to go that route, but now I am. And
Wow.
so to Adam, we got him the job, and they were able to work together, live together, and they're just two great people. They now live in Denver, and you go back to relationships. I left Grand Junction in 2013, so a little over 10 years ago, and I still have multiple relationships back there. And it's funny, for kids that are watching. We talk about, as you grow your network, whether it's your high school friends or your college friends, where you grow in one direction, like your friends are growing in their own other directions. And it's really cool now to look back, 10, 15 years later, where all of us have gone. I have a friend, his name's Aaron Markham. He goes by DJ Triz. He's a DJ. And he was just DJing like the little, you know, local bar in Grand Junction. And now he's DJing the US Open in Flushing, New York. And,
Man.
so it's like we're meeting up at all these sport events. I met him at the Super Bowl, and like we go back, 15 years, and it's cool to see like everything align. And yeah, that's where it goes back to, you show up every day and you surround people that do that in their own lanes. The lanes always reconverge, and I think those are some of the coolest moments. And honestly, like that's why we're on this podcast. Like I met
Yep.
Tanner randomly in Green Bay. I think we reached out. Then he got the job in Miami. He reached out to me. We have a great picture right in front of Hard Rock Stadium. And then it's like, great, now you're in Phoenix doing this thing with the Suns. And it's just like, you have your own, you build your own team. And I think, as much as we work for these other teams, it's about your team too. And you want to surround yourself with those cool people and make changes in life. And, you realize, I think the earlier you realize it's not about you, it's about helping others and serving. For me, that brings more fulfillment than a paycheck, because the paycheck's going to be what it is. You're a number on a spreadsheet, everybody. Like, this is what the
Yep.
job is. Either you want it or you don't, because if you don't want it, somebody else will take it, probably for less money. I wish it worked differently, but that's the reality of the situation. So you have to find other things to fill up your cup. And yeah, those two moments to me, when looking back, I'm smiling, and it's cool
Yeah,
to
it's
see.
crazy.
Yeah, it's cool to see.
I got chills for the first story, first of all. But our industry, the sports industry as a whole, regardless of what department or what side of the business you're on, whether it's the players, the like player news, business, whatever it is, we have an opportunity that most don't. We have an opportunity to impact people's lives in ways that others don't, simply because of the impact of sports. Now, we could every day, you could get on the air and be like, I'm the greatest of all time, and I'm the sportscaster for, a large market now. I've made it. It's all about me. I could go up there and be like, hey, I'm going to sell everything I possibly can. I don't care if you have the money or not. Like, I'm going to sell it to you. And there's people like that.
Yep.
However, what you just said is giving back to individuals, which is what we're doing now, but also allowing yourself to not get elevated past where you should go. Stay humble, stay grounded, and help the next person is so impactful.
Yeah, and I mean, like you think about it, there will always be more or less money. Money is currency just to buy time, and here we are. You talk about, in this day and age, passive revenue and passive income is so important. So as you build out your web of people, you never know. One day it's like, hey, I'm going to come to you with an idea, like this with Tanner. We've got sponsors for the show. We're helping out, or you never meet someone in this form or whatever, and then they have a business opportunity for you on the side. Like, you never know when that stuff's going to happen. So if you put your work and your effort first, the money will come. And again, money will come and go. And then it's up to you to determine how you want to spend it. I mentioned like health and wellness and going to the gym and building relationships with athletes. Like, I learned that very on just because I want to be fit. I want to, it's just how I made friends. It's a community built in. And as you leave college, you guys and women will see that in college, you're around people that are the most like you because you're all the same age. You all pick the same school. You all pick the same major. As you get out into the world, everyone is in their own, little space. And so you're going to miss community because now you're working all of the time and you don't have all the time that you did. And then you're trying to do whatever else you need to do in your life. So as you, kind of find your own path, you bring people with you on that path and you get that sense of community. And that sense of community is so strong, especially in my world. Look, I work until midnight every night. Like, Tanner's up at 6 a.m. doing his workout or whatever before his job. And then he's staying at the Suns game till, midnight in the normal, 9 to 5 day. So he's going from 6 in the morning till midnight. And, there's days if you do that consistently where you'll burn out. But it's how do you fill up your cup? What gets you up every morning? And if you love what you do and if you do it with people that care about you and that you put love into it and you invest back in, that is going to carry you much more than chasing a paycheck or chasing a title. Because I can tell you, even my friends that work at ESPN and at Fox, and I'm talking like the top of the profession, getting there, you're going to have problems no matter where you are in the corporate ladder. You're going to solve 10 problems that you had in your last job, you're going to get 10 new ones. It's not perfect. So like once you think that, being X is going to fill up your cup, the reality once you get there is it's not going to fill up your cup. It just isn't. And the earlier you can learn that, the better, because that will allow you to develop a mindset that will actually benefit you versus quote unquote chasing the dragon. And if you're doing that, you're just going to burn yourself out. I was there. I did that. And if I could do that over again, that is a huge change that I would make. So that's, something, it's not hard. It's not easy to do, but if you can trick your mind into that, and that would be huge. And remember, like, you don't know what you don't know, and you don't have to believe everything that you think. So it's a matter of figuring out what works for you, and then it'll work to a point, realize that it doesn't, okay, let's make a shift. And, again, it's just you control everything, and you're in charge of your own life. And if you think your boss controls you, your boss doesn't. You're not the victim. You get to control whatever you want to do. You can arrange how you spend your money, how you allot your 24 hours in a day. You're in charge of it all. And the older you get, the more responsibilities you get. But here's an opportunity for everybody that's coming out of college. And, this is your time to grow. And your time is to grow and fail as much as you can. And as we talk about building that foundation and getting those great people around you and learning from all of your failures, you're just, for everyone that like lifts weights, well, you're literally ripping your muscle. And then what happens? It builds back stronger. So the more you fail, the more strain you put on yourself, you're building back stronger. So as you get older, you're continuing to gain those experiences, and those experiences turn into value. And, then you're able to build a reputation, and everything comes along with it. But you don't realize that, holy crap, I've been doing this since 20 years. And now finally, the fruits of my labor are coming together. And when that moment comes, it's a really cool moment, but it'll come when you least expect it. And let me tell you that the timeline that you have for yourself, do not put a timeline on anything, because you're chasing the dragon. You're making an, you're worrying about the future. You got to be where your feet are. You've got to give 100% to that day. Yesterday's history, tomorrow's a mystery, whatever you want to say. You're in control of right now. What can I do right now? What do I need right now? Do I need to rest right now? Do I need to put the foot on the brake? You get to choose. And I think that's the coolest thing about being our people, and then having accountability, for these results. It's, me calling Tanner. It's maybe even me sending a text like, hey, kick ass today. Or it's, man, I was thinking about this, like, what can we do? And then if you build those relationships, you can help push each other and you can help grow together. And then if you can share in those successes, I mean, that to me is what fills up my cup. And I would suggest that you try to do the same in your own capacity, because that's what gets me up in the morning. It's certainly not my alarm clock going up.
Wow, I know for a fact that was the fastest hour I've ever done in podcasting, and I know also for a fact that we could do another hour
Yeah.
and people love it. However, we do have to go. I appreciate you so much. This was absolutely incredible. I learned today about the industry and specific career path that you're in. I also learned a little bit about life today. And so I hope that others did that as well. Obviously, this one will get shared with a ton of people. But Josh, I genuinely appreciate you and for valuing this time with us today.
Yeah, anytime. And if anybody watching this wants to reach out to me, my social media is all public. Send me a note, and then we can definitely do this again. And I can teach you guys like how to reach out to people so that they can actually respond to you, and what happens when they
Ooh,
don't respond to you, because I think that's a key lesson, and that will certainly help. But yeah, anybody that wants help doing on air, I do on air coaching as well. So however I can help. Again, nobody does it alone, and don't be afraid to ask questions. And like we have Tanner here to help, create a platform for so many people to learn. And yeah, man, just happy to be a part of it and happy to share my story and spend some time with you.
I love it. Well, I appreciate you. Attitude effort results. Let's continue to grow together and let's inspire others together.